The first time I saw my own face on a missing person poster, I felt a cold, detached curiosity, as if I were studying a stranger. It was a grainy, photocopied image tucked between a flyer for a lost dog and an advertisement for a local band, taped haphazardly to the lamppost outside my favorite coffee shop. The photo was old, from my college graduation a lifetime ago. My smile looked strained, a ghost of the man I used to be. The words beneath it were stark. "Have you seen this man? Mark Benson. Last seen October 18th. I pulled the collar of my coat higher against the autumn chill, took a sip of my bitter coffee, and walked away, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I was, after all, standing right there. I hadn't been missing for the last 6 months. I had been hiding, a ghost in my own life. My name is Mark Benson. I am a 34-year-old architect, or at least I was before my life was systematically dismantled. My disappearance wasn't a spontaneous act of despair. It was a carefully orchestrated necessity, a final, desperate act of self-preservation in a war I didn't even know I was fighting. The conflict's architect was my younger sister, Jenna. She has always been the golden child, the one whose radiant smile could light up a room and whose intricate lies could darken an entire existence. We were never close, not in the way siblings in movies are. There was always a quiet rivalry, a subtle, corrosive tension that our parents, David and Carol, either willfully ignored or actively fostered, always positioning themselves as Jenna's unwavering champions. She was the artist, the volatile free spirit whose emotions were a force of nature. I was the pragmatic, boring older brother, the stable one whose achievements were expected and whose struggles were met with impatient sighs. The trouble, the earthquake that shattered the fragile foundation of our family, began with our grandfather's inheritance. Robert Smith was a wealthy, eccentric inventor who had amassed a small fortune from a patent for a specialized type of energy-efficient battery. He was a kind, sharp-witted man who saw the world in black and white. His will was simple, almost brutally so. His entire estate, worth several $1 million, was to be split evenly between his 2 grandchildren, Jenna and me. There was, however, a single, peculiar condition. To receive the inheritance, we both had to be physically present at the formal reading of the will and simultaneously sign a document together, a pact of unity, as our grandfather's ancient lawyer, Mr. Albright, called it with a solemn flourish. It was our grandfather's sentimental, stubborn notion that money should bring family together, not tear it apart. I was there, of course. I was living and working in the same city, diligently building my career. Jenna was not. She was traveling through Southeast Asia, finding herself and feeding her soul, as she often dramatically put it in her social media posts. When the date for the reading was set, she sent a single, brief email to Mr. Albright, carbon copying me. The email stated that she was in a remote, spiritually significant area of northern Thailand with no reliable internet or mail service, and that it would be spiritually disruptive for her to leave. She authorized me, her responsible older brother, to sign on her behalf. She attached a scanned copy of her passport and a handwritten note, which she claimed to have notarized at a U.S. consulate in Chiang Mai. The note was simple and direct. I, Jenna Marie Benson, hereby grant my brother, Mark Benson, full power of attorney to act on my behalf in all matters pertaining to the estate of our grandfather, Robert Smith, including the signing of the Pact of Unity. The lawyer, Mr. Albright, was hesitant. He was a man who revered the letter of the law, and the will was specific, but the documents Jenna had provided seemed, on the surface, to be in perfect order. The notarization stamp looked official. The signature matched her passport. And I was there in his oak-paneled office, pushing for a resolution. I had student loans, a mortgage on a small condo, and the relentless pressure of city life. This inheritance was my chance for a fresh start, a breathing room I desperately needed. I argued that our grandfather would have wanted practicality to prevail over ceremony. After several weeks of tense back and forth, Mr. Albright, looking weary and overburdened, reluctantly agreed. I signed the Pact of Unity on behalf of both of us, my pen scratching loudly in the quiet room. The money was transferred. My half went into my accounts, a life-changing number that made my hands tremble. Jenna's half was wired to a bank account number she provided in a subsequent, even terser email. For a few months, life was not just good, it was tranquil. The constant, low-grade anxiety that had been my baseline for years finally eased. I paid off my debts, invested a portion wisely, and took a much-needed sabbatical from work. I felt a twinge of guilt about Jenna, a faint echo of brotherly concern, but was quickly overshadowed by a profound sense of relief. I had the money, and she had her freedom. It seemed like a fair, if distant, trade. That illusion shattered one rainy Tuesday afternoon. My parents showed up at my door unannounced, their faces like thunder, their postures rigid with accusation. "Where is it, Mark?" my father demanded, his voice a low growl as he pushed past me into my apartment, his eyes scanning my modestly improved living room as it were a palace of ill-gotten gains. "Where is Jenna's money?" I was baffled, my mind scrambling to catch up. "What are you talking about?" The lawyer wired it to her account in Thailand, months ago. "That's a lie," my mother shrieked, her voice cracking with a pain that seemed genuine. "She never received a single cent. She's been back for 2 weeks, living in a wretched hostel, because she has nothing. She contacted Mr. Albright's office, and his secretary said you handled everything. You signed for her. You stole her inheritance. You betrayed your own sister. The world tilted on its axis. No, that's not true. That's impossible. I have the emails. I have the authorization she sent." But when I opened my laptop, my fingers clumsy with panic. The emails were gone. Not in the trash, not archived. Vanished, as if they had never existed. A cold, sharp dread began to creep up my spine, tightening around my throat. I frantically searched through my cloud storage for the downloaded PDFs of her passport and the notarized letter. The folder was empty. They had been deleted. I called Mr. Albright's office, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. His secretary informed me, in a somber, rehearsed tone, that Mr. Albright had passed away from a sudden heart attack just 3 weeks prior. I was drowning, and Jenna, from thousands of miles away, was holding my head underwater. I tried to reason with my parents, my voice rising in desperation as I explained about the emails, the documents, the now-dead lawyer. But they were a united front of disbelief. They had already been prepped by Jenna's masterful performance. They had heard her version of events in vivid, heartbreaking detail. How I had forged the documents, manipulated the kind, elderly lawyer before his death, and coldly stolen her share of the inheritance to fund my lavish, selfish lifestyle. My new car, my paid-off condo. It was all presented as undeniable evidence of my guilt in their eyes. "You will transfer every penny of her money, plus interest, to her account by the end of the week," my father said, his voice cold and final. A judge pronouncing a sentence. "Or we are going to the police. We will not stand by and let you destroy your sister's life." I knew, with a terrifying, soul-crushing certainty, that the police would believe them. Jenna was a masterful, convincing liar, and I had no proof. The missing emails, the dead lawyer, the money sitting in my account. It was a perfect storm of circumstantial evidence that pointed directly at me. I was looking at criminal charges of fraud, forgery, and grand larceny. My career, my reputation, my freedom, everything I had worked for was about to be annihilated. So I made a choice. I decided to disappear. I used a portion of the very money I was accused of stealing to hire a specialist, a man named Leo who operated in the encrypted shadows of the internet and knew how to create new, untraceable identities. It was the ultimate irony. I sold my condo and my car for cash through a network of intermediaries Leo provided. I closed my bank accounts, withdrawing funds in a way that was designed to avoid scrutiny. I left my phone, my last link to my old life, in a dumpster on the other side of the city. I became a ghost. I took a bus to a small, anonymous city hundreds of miles away, a place of gray skies and quiet streets. I rented a modest, furnished apartment under the name Michael Brown and found a low-key job as a draftsman in a small, nondescript firm. I was Mark Benson, but only to myself, a secret I carried like a shard of glass in my heart. To the world, I was Michael Brown, a quiet man who kept himself. For 6 months, I lived in a state of constant, low-grade paranoia. I avoided security cameras, kept my interactions with neighbors brief and superficial, and flinched at every siren. I followed the news from my old life through online newspaper archives and anonymous forums. I saw the article about my disappearance. It quoted my parents, their faces etched with performative grief, pleading for me to come home. It quoted Jenna, saying through what the article described as fresh tears, that she forgave me and just wanted her brother back. The sheer, breathtaking hypocrisy of it made me physically ill. I knew then, with a chilling clarity, that this wasn't just about the money. This was about something deeper, something more pathological. She didn't just want to ruin me. She needed to be the victim, the long-suffering, heroic sister longing for a lost, criminal brother. My destruction was a foundation upon which she was building her narrative of sainthood. And then the private investigator found me. His name was David Croft. He didn't look like a PI from a noir film. He looked like a friendly, middle-aged accountant, dressed in a sensible coat and carrying a worn leather briefcase. He approached me as I was leaving work, stepping out of the shadows of a nearby building. "Mark? Mark Benson?" he said, his voice quiet but firm, devoid of aggression. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The name I hadn't heard aloud in months was a physical blow. "You have the wrong person," I mumbled, trying to sidestep him. "I don't think I do," he said calmly, showing me a clear, recent photo of myself taken from a security camera near my apartment building. The sight was jarring. "My name is David Croft. I was hired by your sister's husband, Tom." Tom. Jenna had gotten married? The news was a jolt. In the timeline of my old life, she had been vehemently single. The world had kept turning without me. Why? I managed to ask, my throat as dry as dust. "What does he want?" "Because Tom is a good, decent man, and he's starting to see the cracks in the perfect picture," Croft explained, his eyes holding mine with an unnerving intensity. "He hired me to find you, to get your side of the story. But my investigation, it led me elsewhere." He gestured to a quiet, dimly lit bar across the street. "Can we talk?" "Just for a few minutes. I think you'll want to hear what I have to say." Something in his demeanor, a lack of threat, a weary professionalism, made me nod. We took a booth in the back. He told me that Jenna and Tom had gotten married in a quick, quiet ceremony about a year ago. Tom was wealthy in his own right, from a successful family business. At first, everything was storybook perfect. But then small, inexplicable things started to happen. Large, unexplained credit card charges for jewelry that never appeared. Elaborate stories about her past, about friends and trips that would subtly change with each retelling. A temper that could flare with shocking, violent intensity over minor inconveniences, followed by tearful, dramatic apologies. Tom had initially believed the family stories about me stealing the inheritance. It fit the narrative of the greedy and scrupulous brother. But as Jenna's behavior became more erratic and her stories more convoluted, he began to have nagging doubts. His initial request to Croft was simple: find Mark Benson, see if he's alive, and hear his version of events. But Croft, a thorough and methodical man, quickly found that the trail led back to Jenna herself. I dug into the inheritance, Croft said, sipping his whiskey. It took some work, calling in favors, but I traced a bank account in Thailand that your half of the money was sent to. It was closed barely 48 hours after the transfer. The money was immediately moved, laundered through a series of sophisticated shell corporations in Europe and the Caribbean, and eventually landed in a secure account in the Cayman Islands, an account that was accessed just last month by Jenna. She used a significant portion of the funds to pay off a massive, secret personal debt she'd accrued from a high-stakes online gambling addiction. I stared at him, stunned into silence. The pieces were crashing together in my mind, forming a horrifying picture. She had the money the whole time? I finally whispered, the words feeling alien on my tongue. Every last dime, plus the interest it had accrued, Croft confirmed, his expression grim. She set you up with the precision of a master tactician. She needed a fall guy, a plausible villain for her narrative. She authorized you to sign, giving her complete deniability. Then, she accessed your email. She must have had your password, perhaps from when you were teenagers, or she hired a hacker, and meticulously deleted all evidence of her involvement. Then, she played the heartbroken victim. With the only other witness, Mr. Albright, dead, you were left holding the bag, with no way to prove your innocence. He opened his briefcase and handed me a thick manila folder. It's all in here. Bank statements, wire transfer records, a forensic IT report from a specialist I work with, detailing how your email was accessed from an IP address linked to Jenna's apartment. It's a complete, airtight exoneration, Mark. My hands trembled as I took the folder. It felt heavy with the weight of my stolen life. The final, crucial piece, Croft said, leaning forward, is the will itself. I managed to get a certified copy from the probate court archives. Your grandfather's Pact of Unity clause. Look at the specific wording. He pointed to a highlighted paragraph. It states that you both must be present or provide a legally binding proxy. Her notarized letter, even if its origins are shady, was a legally binding proxy at the time of the signing. You acted in good faith on documentation that appeared legitimate. You did nothing wrong. Mark, she manipulated you. She manipulated the lawyer, and she manipulated your parents. She orchestrated this entire tragedy. I felt a wave of emotion so powerful it was nauseating, a dizzying relief that made the room spin, a white-hot rage at the sheer calculated evil of it, and profound, aching sadness for the sister I never really had, for the family that was always just an illusion. Croft slid a business card across the table. On the back, he had written a phone number. That's Tom's personal cell. He wants to talk to you. He's on your side. He's as much a victim in this as you are, in a different way. I called Tom from the privacy of my barren apartment later that night. He answered on the first ring, his voice sounding exhausted, ragged, and deeply apologetic. Mark? God, Mark. I am so sorry. I had no idea. We all believed her. She's so convincing. He confirmed everything Croft had told me. He had confronted Jenna with the evidence just 2 days prior, and she had, after hours of screaming denials and vicious personal attacks, finally broken down in a fit of hysterical sobbing and admitted the truth. He said her confession was chilling. There wasn't an ounce of genuine remorse. Only fury that her meticulously constructed house of cards was collapsing. Tom had already filed for divorce. I can't be married to someone capable of this level of deception, he said, his voice hollow. It's like I never knew her at all. What about my parents? I asked, my voice flat, already anticipating the answer. Tom sighed, a long, weary sound. I sent them the entire report, Mark. Every page. I thought they had a right to know the truth. Their reaction, it wasn't what I expected. Your mother called me, screaming that I was being manipulated by you, that you had fooled the investigator, and were trying to destroy Jenna's life out of spite. Your father said it was all a pack of lies. They are choosing to believe Jenna's new, updated story, that you somehow framed her to get revenge. It was a final, absolute betrayal. The evidence was irrefutable, a mountain of facts and data, and they still chose a lie. They chose the daughter they had always favored, closing their eyes to the truth because it was easier than admitting they had been wrong, that they had driven their son away for a fantasy. A week later, with Tom's support and cross-evidence, I was back in my old city, sitting in the sleek, modern office a high-powered defense attorney Tom had recommended. Her name was Sarah Jones, and she was a shark in a business suit. We presented the entire package to the district attorney's office. The case against me was formally and immediately dropped. There would be no charges, no trial, no stain on my record, at least not a legal one. I was a free man, but the prison of my family's betrayal remained. The fallout was swift, brutal, and thorough. Jenna's divorce from Tom was finalized with stunning speed. The prenuptial agreement she had signed leaving her with almost nothing. My parents, in their blind devotion, had spent a small fortune on lawyers trying to protect Jenna from Tom's false accusations, draining their retirement savings and becoming socially isolated as the truth began to leak out among their circle. They tried to contact me, leaving a series of increasingly desperate voicemails on my new, temporary phone. Their messages a cocktail of pleas, justifications, and guilt-tripping. "She's your sister, Mark," my mother cried in one particularly dramatic message. "Can't you find it in your heart to forgive her? She was young and scared. We need to be a family again. We've all suffered enough." I listened to each one with a detached coldness that surprised me. Then I deleted them. I permanently changed my number. The line had been drawn, not by me in a fit of pique this time, but by the unassailable, documented truth. There was no going back. I used what was left of my inheritance, my rightful half, to start my own small, boutique architecture firm. I chose a name that had no connection to my past. Tom and I, bound by the strange, painful circumstances that brought us together, remained in touch. It wasn't a close friendship, but a mutual understanding, a partnership of survivors who had seen the same monster and lived to tell the tale. One afternoon, several months later, I was walking to the park near my new office, enjoying a rare moment of peace. Taped to a bench was a faded, tattered, missing person poster with my face on it, flapping limply in the breeze, half peeled away. I stopped and looked at it, at the ghost of my former self. I reached out and pulled it down, the paper brittle and soft in my hand. I wasn't missing anymore. I had been found not by them, but by myself. I had faced a monster in the dark and discovered it was just my sister all along, a scared, malicious girl trapped in a woman's body. And I had walked away. I crumpled the poster into a tight ball and threw it into a nearby trash can. It landed with a soft, final thud. I turned and kept walking, my steps steady and sure, into the rest of my life, leaving the ghost of Mark Benson behind for good.